Hey everyone, and welcome back to another explainer right here on Animal Notebook. Today we are turning our eyes away from land and looking out into the vast, open ocean to focus on one of the most majestic creatures on our planet. Our explainer today is called Albatross, astonishing flight without limits. Honestly, if you've ever stared out at the crashing waves and wondered what it actually takes to survive out there in such a boundless, unforgiving environment, well, you are in for an absolute treat today.
See, the albatross is a true marvel of evolution. It's a creature that spends the vast majority of its life just wandering the turbulent seas, literally only touching land when it's time to breed. They are the undisputed monarchs of the oceanic winds. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the awe-inspiring facts behind how they pull off this seemingly impossible lifestyle, from their insane physical adaptations all the way to their surprisingly deep, emotional, social lives.
So here's a quick look at our flight path today. We'll be covering masters of the open ocean, diet and deep-sea foraging, romance and lifelong bonds, myths, omens, and legends, surviving a changing world, and then we'll wrap the whole thing up with a special 4-part rapid-fire FAQ.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1. Masters of the Open Ocean, the Ultimate Gliders.
To really get a grasp on the albatross, you have to understand their mind-boggling scale. They aren't just big birds. They are pushing the absolute physical limits of airborne biology. The wandering albatross, for example, boasts a staggering wingspan of up to 3.5 meters. That's 11.5 feet. To put that into perspective for a second, if you laid this bird on the ground with its wings fully outstretched, it'd be as long as a small car. They literally have the largest wingspan of any living bird on Earth. But you know, it's not just about size. It's about how they actually use those massive wings.
Because they don't really flap them. Instead, they use a brilliant technique called dynamic soaring. It's essentially windsurfing. They extract energy from the wind gradients that form right over the ocean waves, and that lets them glide for hours, covering thousands of kilometers with barely any energy. And here's the craziest part. They have this specialized shoulder lock tendon. It acts just like a biological locking mechanism, letting them hold those giant wings outstretched for hours with virtually zero muscular effort. No way, right? Just locked and gliding.
Which brings us to our next point. Section 2. Diet and deep-sea foraging, or the masters of the ocean buffet. Traveling thousands of kilometers and sometimes completely circumnavigating the globe requires serious fuel. So how do they eat? Well, marine biologists call them surface Caesars. Unlike birds that plunge deep underwater, albatrosses snatch their meals right at the surface. They love squid, fish, krill, crustaceans. It's basically a seafood lover's dream. But they're also highly opportunistic scavengers. They will absolutely feed on ocean carrion, which is exactly why you'll constantly see them trailing behind commercial fishing boats, just hoping for an easy meal from the discarded catch. But finding food across a completely featureless ocean, that requires some anatomical superpowers. First, they have these prominent tubular nostrils on the sides of their bills. These act like a highly tuned biological radar, giving them an exceptional sense of smell to detect food from miles away. Second, if you live entirely at sea, you're going to ingest a lot of seawater. To handle that, they have specialized salt glands right above their eyes that actively filter and excrete the excess ocean salt out of their bodies. Pretty wild adaptation. All right, from physical superpowers to something a little more relatable. Section 3, romance and lifelong bonds, decades of devotion. Out on the open water, they are usually silent, solitary travelers. But when they return to their remote island colonies to breed, everything changes. Albatrosses are famously monogamous. They form profound pair bonds that can last for decades. And they don't just, pair up and call it a day. They actively maintain these relationships through incredibly elaborate, synchronized courtship dances and vocal displays. It's this beautiful social ritual that ensures the two parents are perfectly in sync with one another.
And they really need to be in perfect sync, because their reproductive cycle is incredibly slow and demanding. A pair will typically lay just a single egg. Incubation alone takes 2 to 3 months. Then, raising that one fluffy chick takes another 5 to 9 months of intense, non-stop teamwork. Because it's such a massive shared investment, many species only breed every other year. Plus, they don't even start breeding until they're 5 to 10 years old. It's a huge commitment.
So, with a presence like that, it makes sense that they've captivated us for centuries. Let's look at Section 4, myths, omens, and legends.
Historically, if early sailors spotted an albatross far out at sea, it was a massive deal. They were seen as good omens, and folklore even suggested they carried the souls of lost sailors. But that cultural meaning took a pretty dark turn thanks to Samuel Taylor Coleridge's famous poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. In it, a sailor shoots a friendly albatross and is punished by having to wear its carcass. That poem literally birthed the phrase, an albatross around one's neck, meaning a heavy, inescapable burden.
And unfortunately, the burden these incredible birds are carrying today isn't some poetic myth. Section 5. Surviving a Changing World.
Tragically, albatrosses are currently among the most threatened bird families on the entire planet. They face 4 major human-driven threats. First, long-line fishing bycatch, where they accidentally get caught on baited hooks and drown. Second is the really alarming issue of plastic pollution. Adults mistake floating plastic for food and then feed it to their chicks, which is just devastating. Third, invasive predators like rats, cats, and mice have been introduced to their breeding islands. And finally, climate change is altering their food supply and threatening their coastal nesting habitats. Because of all this, many albatross species are now officially classified as vulnerable, endangered, or even critically endangered.
It's a really tough reality, but understanding it is the first step toward conservation. Now, let's make sure we've locked in the key takeaways from this explainer with Section 6, the Animal Notebook FAQ. I've got 4 rapid-fire questions for you. Let's go. Question 1. Considering that incredibly slow reproduction and the harsh environments they live in, how long do albatrosses actually live? Any guesses?
The answer is a staggering 40 to 60 plus years. They're among the longest-lived birds in the world. And we definitely have to shout out Wisdom. She's a Lanzan albatross who was first banded by scientists way back in 1956. She's the oldest known wild bird in the world, and she's incredibly still breeding into her 70s. Just amazing.
All right, question 2. Where in the world do they actually live? What oceans are they calling home?
Well, geographically, they're primarily the masters of the Southern Ocean and the North Pacific. Curiously, they don't really inhabit the North Atlantic naturally. But within their ranges, they are supreme wanderers, often completely circling the globe during their non-breeding periods.
Question 3. We've mentioned the wandering and Laysan albatross, but how many different species of albatross are there in total?
Currently, science recognizes about 21 to 22 different species of albatross. They're grouped into 4 distinct families: the great albatrosses, the mollymox, the North Pacific albatrosses, and the sooty albatrosses.
And that brings us to FAQ 4, our final question, and this is actually one I'm leaving for you to ponder. What role must humanity play to ensure these souls of lost sailors don't disappear from our oceans forever? They are vital marine predators, they're key indicators of ocean health, and they desperately need our help to mitigate things like bycatch and plastic pollution. I really hope this explainer has left you as captivated by these astonishing creatures as I am. Thank you so much for tuning in to Animal Notebook. Keep observing, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next explainer.